Today's skill is brought to you by Squarespace. Today I see if I can learn the basics of using a lathe in just one sitting. So stay tuned to see how that went. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Now, I've wanted to learn how to use a lathe for a long time. I did do an episode in which I kind of lathed something, but it doesn't count. I turned a drill press into a lathe and I used regular wood chisels. You can check that out here if you want. But it is so completely different that I don't count it. It's all the wrong tools. But when I saw this WEN 3424 lathe show up on Facebook Marketplace for like $99 still in the box, I had to go for it, right? Like, that's a hell of a deal. As a sidebar, a lot of the reviews consider that a really great starter lathe, so I'm gonna leave a link to it in the description. It's not 99 bucks, it's more expensive than that, but it's pretty cheap for a starter lathe. Anyways, I figured it would be fun to challenge myself for this video and see how fast I can actually learn the basics and make a thing. So to that end, I gave myself roughly 3 hours to do this whole thing, so let's see how it goes. So I figured the first place to start is to actually figure out what the hell this thing is, like all the parts of it and stuff. So behold, my lathe. Let me start by saying that this thing is heavy. For like the size of it, I didn't expect for it to be as heavy as it is, but it's perfect because it doesn't move around or dance on me when I'm working with it. So like, I didn't even have to screw it into my table or anything. It's a great bench lathe, I guess. All right, so on one side of the lathe, we have what's called the live center. This just has a little point in the middle and free spins. You have a hand wheel in the back to kind of dial it in forward and back, a lock to make sure it doesn't move on you, and then you can also just kind of move the entire thing to adjust to your stock. Basically, the side with the motor on it stays stationary, and that piece can kind of move to accommodate the length of stock that you have. In the middle here, we have the tool rest. This is where your tool rests while you're working on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you can kind of move it back and forth so you can get it closer to the piece, and then you can also move it up and down as needed. Then on the opposite side from the live center, you have the spindle. This is the part that's actually controlled by a motor. Now I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't read the instructions thoroughly enough. You can actually change the speed by going inside of this thing and changing the belt. I don't show this here because I just learned that like 2 minutes before starting to film. Good to know. But you will notice it actually comes with this little faceplate installed. And to take it off, you just use this bar here to place in one of the little holes that are on the chuck and use that to work with the supplied wrench just to loosen it up. This bad boy unscrews and is just kind of another attachment point you could use. You can kind of screw in a piece of stock to that plate if you were making something like a bowl or whatever. It just gives a good solid foundation. Now you'll notice that the center of that spindle doesn't actually have any threads on the inside. That's because things like this drive center will actually just kind of force fit inside. It's tapered so it fits nice and snug. And that's all you need. It actually holds in really strong. In fact, to get it out, you need to use that same little bar and you just kind of push it from the other end, which I thought was pretty cool actually, that it can hold on snug enough to actually like handle what we're gonna be doing with it. What else is cool is there's a whole bunch of different kind of chuck attachments you can use, one with little like jaws to hold onto the bottom of a bowl or a cup or something, a bunch of different sizes of stuff like this, just a whole bunch depending on what you're working on. Really cool. And this isn't, I guess, just a product review. It's kind of a product review, but I've never done it before, so it's hard for me to compare it to other lathes. But I did like that they added in this little tiny tool rack here. It feels kind of cheap and plastic at first, but it does the job. It holds everything exactly where I want it. But that's pretty much it. For all the stuff you can do with it, it's a super basic tool. You just kind of flick it on and one side starts spinning. Again, you're going to notice that the live center on the other side does not spin. That one motor is the thing that turns everything. All right, but that's only part of the equation. The other part are the chisels involved. Look at these things. They come in a whole bunch of different varieties to do a whole bunch of different jobs. In the spirit of getting this done as cheaply as possible, I just bought these bad boys like the beginner set from Harbor Freight Tool. Again, I'll link it below. It just comes with the 6 most commonly used chisels. That is this kind of wider U-shaped one that's called a roughing gouge, used to rough out a piece and get it from square to round pretty much. This smaller one of the same shape that's called a spindle gouge for doing more fine detail work, rounding off beads and stuff. You'll see as we go. And then finally, this one here that looks like a badass sword that's called a parting tool, which aside from being used to kind of mark and remove material, is used to part the wood, right? If you want to cut it off from the rest of it, you can just kind of use that and it'll grind its way through. You're going to see that too. But yeah, just like with the chucks there are so many different kind of chisels for the different kind of job you need to do. This really, really long one is a bowl gouge, I guess, specifically because if you're getting deeper in a bowl, you need that extra length, right? This, by the way, I feel like is a rabbit hole I'm going to super fall into. I'm a spoiler alert here. I friggin' love turning things on a lathe. It is really fun. But with that, now that we have the basics of what one needs to get started, how do we actually go about doing it? So first things first, I'm starting with this square piece of poplar here that I've measured from corner to corner just so I can figure out exactly where the center is. I did that on both sides. I then take my drive center and put the little pin in the middle there exactly in the center of the board and use a hammer just to seat it all the way down. Imagine you really want to make sure this is seated because this is what's going to be like driving the whole thing, right? So you don't want that to tear out at all. With that good to go, I just placed it really firmly into that spindle. Then moved in the live center, again taking my time to make sure it is perfectly centered onto that board before locking it down and then using the hand wheel to really drive it in to make sure it's sunk and secure. Now testing it out, I turn it on and it spins and doesn't like fly off and hit me in the face. I'm not gonna lie, the first bunch of times I started this thing, I'd stand like off center and flip the switch. I know I'm not good at this. I don't want to risk anything. Oh, speaking of, I don't think you see my face once during this whole thing. I'm wearing safety glasses the whole time. Make sure you do too. In fact, I need to invest in a face mask. I've been told that if it does fly off or whatever, you'd rather have the mask than just safety glasses. So that will be my next purchase. All right, so the next thing I need to do is actually set up my tool rest. I read that you want the height of this to be just below the center of your board, and then you want it nice and close, but making sure that the board doesn't touch it while it's spinning. Okay, with that set, there's nothing left to do but actually try to like put chisel to wood. Now, since this piece is square, we have those corners that are coming, right? So we don't want to just shove this thing in. We want to really, really lightly like begin to take pieces off and then move our way down, cutting that loose. And I was surprised at how easy this actually was. Like I thought it would be like bang, 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 bang as those corners hit, but it's going so fast that it almost feels like you're just trimming like one uniform piece. At this stage, it's just taking off a bunch of small chips, but as it starts to get closer to a round stock, I noticed it changing to being actual like sawdust. Another really quick thing about this is, let's say this is the tool rest. I learned that you never want to go like above the tool rest when you're lifting, right? You stop at you know, this is the maximum, which makes sense because this thing is spinning, and if you go above it, there's a good chance that it's going to get sucked down between the tool rest and your piece, which obviously isn't good, right? But yeah, look at how cleanly this thing is knocking down those corners. It's so cool. Now, the technique of actually moving it nice and smoothly isn't so much your arms here, but I'm just kind of basing it and moving my legs, like rocking from one side to the next. And also to keep it firm and keep my cuts at the same depth the whole way, I'm securing it with my thumb and then using my finger to guide along the fence here. And doing that real slow took me maybe about 10 minutes to get this whole side nice and round. So I just moved my tool rest and did exactly the same thing on the other side, wearing it down and then just smoothing out that transition as best as I could. And at this point, I was definitely a lot more comfortable than when I started. So that one only took me like 5 minutes to get nice and round, which I'm really surprised about. I thought that it would be scarier, honestly. I thought it would take a lot more time to kind of feel it out. But after a little bit, it feels natural. It feels like something like that makes sense. So now that I learned how to round something out, I figured it'd be cool to learn a couple of the more basic skills of making something pretty. So I wanted to practice making a bead in the wood. Basically, the wood comes down and makes a big rounded bead in the middle. You'll see it. It makes more sense when you actually see it. So I start by marking this out, which is dead easy to do with a pencil as it spins. Perfectly round. It works out. I marked the ends of my beads and then roughly the middle so I knew where everything was going to. Next, I busted out this badass parting tool so that I can give myself some space to actually round off to. Oh, and this is actually a good time to bring up a thing I learned, which is the ABCs of lathing, which is basically you anchor it, you rest the bevel against your piece of wood, and then you actually start to cut. And to cut, all you're doing is you're lifting it up, right? So that bevel is up against the wood, and as you lift, now it's starting to introduce that blade. So that's gonna actually make it start to work. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of placing that bevel down and then rocking the back end up until it's fully like as deep as I want it to be. All right, so next I'm gonna be using the third of the 3 tools that I decided to use, which is the spindle tool. I'm basically going to be using this to round off my beads to those ends there. To do this, just like before, I anchor it and then place the bevel against the wood. But this time, as I raise up to cut, I also turn it towards the outside of where I'm cutting. This has the effect of just kind of rounding that whole piece off. And by just starting at the end closest to where I cut into and working my way towards the middle, I'm able to really get this rounded off. This again was a surprisingly easy technique to get into. That's really, really cool. Though it was a little long, I was going for more like of a bead, like a ball shape. So I decided to try one more down here. But this time wanted to get fancy and actually measure out that gap with my calipers. This way they're both dying into exactly the same kind of depth. Once I was happy with that, I just did exactly the same thing, taking those little bits at a time until I had a much more rounded shape. Then just for the hell of it, I just kind of wanted to play. I did a few more on the end here, much smaller this time to see if that's more difficult, and then like in different kind of orientations. And you see I made one that was a lot sharper, ones that had only one end to it, another that formed a little shelf. Like, look at that. So this is a practice piece, but I'm genuinely proud of that. That looks like a table leg or something. That's really cool. And I want to tell you, at this point, playing with it, learning all the bits and pieces, I'm maybe an hour and a half in. Like an hour and a half in. That's awesome. This is a super accessible, once you have the tools and stuff, a super accessible skill. This is a lot of fun to do. I can tell you how excited it makes me when something that you think is going to be really difficult ends up being crazy easy. Which is why I love today's sponsor, Squarespace. So I remember when I was making the Skill Tree website, I was kind of nervous because I hadn't made a website that would be like public facing before, like for people to see. But Squarespace made that dead easy. First off, because it has just a ridiculous amount of templates that you can go off of. So really kind of whatever vibe you want your site to be or whatever functionality you want, they probably already have a template that's pretty close. And if they happen to not have what you're looking for, they have this awesome tool, Design Intelligence, that is it's AI that will help you make the site exactly like you want it. But yeah, from there, it's super simple to use. If you want a way to have a store and accept payments, you can get that. If you want a gallery to show off your artwork or maybe your videos, if you're a YouTube channel, like that's super easy to set up too. And I'm sure all of you know that if you have a business you're trying to start up or something, having a website is absolutely a must, and Squarespace makes that dead easy. So if you're ready to get your message out to the world, just head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch your masterpiece, go to squarespace.com/skilltree and save 10% off of your first website domain. Again, I've used it for years. I love it, and I think you're gonna love it too. All right, so let's recap what we've learned. We figured out like the workings of the lathe for the most part. I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of things, but the basics. We've learned to rough a piece of square wood into something round and then also make some like decorative beads and stuff, which was really, really cool. I was feeling so like cocky at this point that I decided I wanted to make a thing. Like actually just try with those basic techniques to see if I could make something kind of cool. So I decided to make a wand out of this piece of oak that I had laying around. I figured it was also a cool test because it is a harder wood than the poplar that I use and just kind of see how that responds. But just doing all the same stuff, it really didn't feel that different. Though I think in the future for those harder stocks, I'd want it to be turning faster. I think closer to the end, I felt it wanting to chip out a little bit more, and I don't think that would have been a problem if it was turning faster. I just recently learned how to make it turn faster, so that's my fault. Stupid. I then just went in with my parting tool to mark out kind of where the handle area would end and where the wand part would begin. Then again used a roughing gouge just to start taking that down and beginning my taper. This is where I thought it'd be kind of cool just to see if I could have the wand have like a little bump in the middle of it, like, I don't know, some variety. So with that marked out, I just went in with the parting tool and did exactly like I did with the bead, just making sure at first that they're the same width and that the material was removed enough on either side before just kind of blending that over with the spindle tool. All exactly the same basic techniques we practiced with the softer wood. Then used all those same techniques again on that handle, marking out the base, roughing it down so it was a little bit smaller, cutting in where little decorative beads and shells will go, before jumping in with the spindle tool and just making sure all of them are rounded off and looking cool. Then finally, my favorite part was sanding. God, sanding on this thing is so good. Normally I would have been sitting there forever and it's like an awkward thing to sand, but this I just kind of pushed the sandpaper against it. Love that. Finally, I used the parting tool to cut most of the way through my stock, and then just took it out and finished it off with a saw. Then after sanding the bottom and the tip clean, look at that. That's a little wand. It's a stubby little wand, but like the piece of scrap I had was only so big to zoom in. But look at it, that is cool for having, at this point, almost officially 3 hours it took me to go from never touching a lathe before to making this little thing. Because the sanding was so easy, I was able to go up really high grit, like it's super shiny. It's awesome, it's really good. From here, I'd probably like stain it or add detail or whatever, but like for my very first project, I am crazy pleased about that. So yeah, a few things to take away. One, that lathe, if you're thinking about getting a starter lathe, I super recommend that thing. I can't compare it to other lathes because I've not used them, but this was really easy to use. It felt like it had enough power to do what I needed to do, even though I was a numbnut and didn't put the ratio up more. And honestly, the same can be said about these Harbor Freight chisels here. They seem to do the trick. I know a lot of people on like reviews and stuff said they needed to be sharpened. I didn't find that, but I don't know the difference. I will learn how to sharpen, and then I will get them like extra sharp and see if it feels even easier. I can't imagine it feeling easier than that just felt, but maybe that's cool. And then my final thing is, if you've ever been on the fence about learning this particular thing, oh, please do. It is wildly fun. From going like in the simple bits here and just kind of playing with the shapes, honestly, just playing with it and seeing what kind of different shapes I can make, depending on which way I held the chisel, how close I put things. So cool. I desperately now want to make chess pieces with this. That sounds great. Yeah, like any skill, it takes some practice, but this is one of the few skills I can say that the practice itself, super fun. I had a great time. Yeah, I'll use links to all the stuff I used down below in case you want to start the same way, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. Super fun to do. Now, if you had fun watching this project or you found it helpful, do give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. Okay, that's it for me. I do hope you give this skill a try. It's super fun, but in the meantime, keep leveling up, you. You've made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we couldn't do any of this without them. It's because of them we're able to try cool, fun stuff like learning how to lathe. A special giant shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, Froggy and Dragon Designs. It's amazing and humbling that you support us the way we do, and we are working on a whole bunch of stuff to say thank you. So yeah, wait for that. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. Okay, I'm gonna go secure like a lot more scrap wood. I just want to turn everything down. It's kind of addicting, a lot of fun.